we're going to start by climbing onto our special purpose ladder. And then we got to take this little part of the intake off. We don't have to take the whole air box off. We're just going to disconnect right here with an 8mm. Disconnect this and just push down on that gray piece and pull it off like that. Disconnect this one over here, which is on the bottom on this one, and this one's not quite as easy. It's off, and we'll disconnect right here with an 8mm also, or loosen. Pull off. Get that out of the way. Now we're gonna have to take this cover off. It's got 10mm bolts. Should have 4 of them. There's one back there, and the other one's gonna be right there. So I'm gonna go grab my electric ratchet and a 10mm socket and get those off. These are the bolts out of that little engine cover. I removed those in the places I showed you, and you also have to pull up on this wiring harness. It's got those little push pins in 4 spots. Just pull it straight up and it would come disconnected. Oh, and on this side, that one's broke. And then this should come out. It's a little tight, but it'll come out. All right, actually, that cover does not come off. I don't know how I didn't notice this before, but it's got spots to go through it to get to the intake manifold bolts. So each one of those spots has an intake manifold bolt under it. So we got to take those off. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one's probably got one behind here too. I just can't see back there, but I would assume there's 5 on each side. Passenger side, 4 through the holes, and then 1 in the back. Driver's side, 1 up front, then 4 through the holes. All 10mm. All right, I have all those bolts loose with my electric ratchet, 10mm deep socket, and a 3-inch extension. And there was one all the way back there. I just moved the socket around and was able to find it. Also, we got to disconnect the throttle body connector. Red clip just pulls out. That one seemed like it was broke. And disconnect the map sensor. Has this little blue clip, which these can be a pain. Gonna need to get a pocket screwdriver for that. It doesn't want to come off this way. Feels like it's gonna break, so you got to go in here and push from this side first to break it free, and then you should be able to get it out the rest of the way. That should be all the way. All right, now that's disconnected. Got to disconnect this line same way as the other lines on the intake. Just push on the gray piece, move it to the side, make sure everything else is off. That piece went back in there on that wiring harness. That's out. Everything's out of the way on this side, so the intake should come up, and we're just gonna have to lift it up and pull it out. So I almost missed it. This hose, same thing, push in, pull off. It connects to the intake manifold right there. You can disconnect it at that end or this end. I chose this end because it seemed quicker, easier. And this electrical connector right here. You can't see the tab because it's facing that way, but it feels like it's got one of the locking clips also. It does, I can see it. on that side, that red piece. So we're gonna have to try to move that out of the way with the pocket screwdriver and then disconnect it before pulling this intake manifold all the way off. And of course, it's going to be a pain to get to since it's upside down. If you want, you could just remove that 10mm bolt and remove the valve out of the intake. I'm going to try this for another second before I do that though. Alright, that's not wanting to move, so I'm going to just disconnect it this way. All right, that's out of the way. So now the intake will come up. Intake's out of the way. I had to lift the front up, pull it out some, lift it up some more, pull it out some. It'd be easier if you took these bolts out, but I know I could get it out without taking the bolts out. You have to push these up and then turn them to get them out because they like lock in place right here. All right, pull this little mat off, engine cover, whatever. And there's all your fuel lines. So we're replacing this injector, injector number 2, because I think that's causing the misfire on this truck, because I swapped the coil, the plug, and the wire with the cylinder behind it, and the misfire did not move according to my scan tool data. So it's either this injector or compression, but I'm thinking it's this injector just because of how the truck's running. So we gotta disconnect the fuel line right here, 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 and here. Disconnect this 10mm bolt, move the fuel lines out of the way, and then we'll be able to get this fuel rail out. So for these lines, you're gonna need a 17mm wrench to disconnect them. I got them all broke loose right now. And then, like I said, you're gonna need a 10 socket or wrench right there. You're supposed to replace these lines when you take them off because they're crush fit. So GM recommends you replace them anytime you take them off. So that's what we're gonna do. I don't know how some more fuel just came out of there. The line, as you saw, was already disconnected. These are gonna be 13mm bolts. And if you were taking off this side, you would have to move this line up here, which you would need your fuel line disconnect tool for to get disconnected right there and down there. All of those should be out. And they feel like they just stay in the fuel rail. They do. So now we're gonna need a pry bar to try and get under the fuel rail to pop it loose, because it's tight. I mean, I might not need a pry bar. As you can see, I just popped it loose right there. But you might need a pry bar on yours. You see these O-rings, make sure you do not lose any of those O-rings. So that one's down in the head. That one, I can't tell yet. I gotta get the fuel rail out of the way the rest of the way, but it's connected right there. So I'm gonna have to grab a pocket screwdriver and disconnect that. All right, I actually disconnected the fuel pressure regulator right there instead of disconnecting the harness at the fuel rail, and it came off like that. Now we gotta disconnect the injector clip, which same as every other clip. Move the red piece out of the way, and then push the little tab in, pull, and we have to get this piece off, which I think the easiest way is coming from the back side probably, and getting on the ear like that and making it come off like that, and going back and forth on each side of the injector for that. Well, I got it out, and that clip did not want to cooperate. I did what I said I was going to do and stuck it in there and moved it back and forth. Then sometimes I had to stick the pocket screwdriver in here, right here, and pull it that way, and eventually I got it off. And we got the new injector here. Comes with new seals for all the injectors actually on that side, so that's good. Comes with 4 new ones for that. Comes with 8 of the seals right there, so we're gonna swap all those over. All right, new injectors in, all new seals are on. So now all you gotta do is work backwards. Put the fuel rail on, 13mm bolts for it, then put the fuel lines on with 17mm wrench. Make sure you reconnect your fuel pressure regulator. Then after that, put the intake manifold back on with the 10mm bolts. Connect your wiring, connect all your little hoses and stuff, connect your purge valve, and connect your electrical connectors. Put the intake back on with the 8mm, and you're done. Make sure it runs right. Also, a quick little note with these lines, I always start them by hand. You can see this bolt's still loose. I put it in place just to kind of hold it in place. Then I start these by hand, just a couple threads, then put this line on, start them by hand, make sure everything's lined up correctly before tightening those down first, and then tightening this bolt down. And also, when you tighten these 4 down, they're gonna feel like you can go more, but because you're crushing the line, but you need to judge it, because if you go too much, you're gonna crack the line and it's gonna leak. So it's not gonna get to like a wall and just stop like most bolts will. So you need to judge it, turn it by hand. Oh, it just got a little bit tighter. Go maybe 1/4 or 1/3 of a turn and you'll be good.